Good afternoon, everybody. Happy New Year. Happy 2018. I hope everybody had a safe New Year's celebration if you did any of that, and wishing you all a healthy, prosperous, and wonderful year moving ahead. Today, I'm Dee Reinhardt with Illinois WorkNet, and on the call with us is Olivia Grisham Miller, and we've got Tammy coming along in just a moment as soon as I unmute her. And we'll get started on our agenda of items. Let's talk a little bit about the enrolled dashboard. I'm going to pull this document up so that you can see it just a little bit better. And then I'm going to make it a little bit smaller here. Okie doke. So nobody had a 2151 past due. Give yourselves a round of applause. I expect to hear you clapping into your computer there. We have one customer at Leslie Bates who requires enrollment, but we've been in discussion about that with them, so I'm not concerned about that one quite yet. 2151A past due, I know this was really a bad day to be doing this webinar because yesterday was the first of the month that anybody might have come into work, and so there was 358 2151As past due. So nobody's at fault here. It's just the third day of the month, and I'm sure some of you have even changed some of those numbers since I did the count at 2 o'clock, hopefully anyway. But there are a couple of agencies that had all of theirs done already. So will be for them, we have Phalanx, Mantricon, and Homework Hangout, along with Kara, all totally done. Inspiration and Jane Addams only have 2 left, along with Two Rivers Regional Council, which was very good. So thank you for your hard work on all of those items. Because there were so many that were past due, we didn't have too many that were in the minimal progress or no progress or situation worse. So there's just a few in a couple of those places. If you have marked them as such, please make sure that you get a conciliation appointment scheduled and move those customers to conciliation status. We have completion statuses that need to be updated. A couple for Safe Haven, one for Central State Sear, North Lawndale has one, OAI has 2, Rock River you've got 1, and Tri-County Urban League you have 5, but that's split out between your 2 locations. And then there were several more with customers who needed to be updated because they've been marked as SNAP ineligible. So Caps Roseland, you've got 13 on the list. I need you guys to take care of those, along with the 1s and 2s for some of the other agencies, and then Rock River, you've got 8. So if you can catch up on those as you're going through your 2151As that need to be updated, that would be super duper wonderful. And then I didn't even bother looking at packets started, ready, or done because I didn't want to chastise anybody for anything because it's only the 3rd of the month. So those numbers look pretty good for my opinion. What about you guys, Tammy and Olivia?
Yeah, I think they look great. Looking good.
I agree.
Need the 2151As uploaded, and we can start doing the staffings after that then.
Yep. All righty, so I'm going to minimize this, and then we do want to talk a little bit about check-in if you didn't get a chance to check in yet. We want to talk about the ISTEPs, and I'm going to pull my screen up so that you can see. And I'm going to start from the other side so that you guys can still check in if you need to. And just to let you know, the updated instructions are in the file pod in the lower left-hand corner. So we have the updated instruction sheet, or instructions, And we also have the updated initial customer intake form. And what I did was I put, excuse me, what IWDS service are associated with the items that we'll be counting in the ISTEP dashboard. And we covered the ISTEP dashboard on the last CBO call, but we're gonna refresh it again just now, because now you've got instructions that go with the actual documentation. So on a customer, I have Betty Boop up. On a customer, if you are looking at their personal development or their career planning, sorry about that noise, I think it was in my phone, or the academic and technical skills, you will see on their timeline and status where it is either on track or off track, we have a new option labeled not required. This is for those customers who don't need any steps for that area. And we had the conversation last time. I don't expect you guys to go back and update everybody all at one time. But as you are in a customer's file, if you're doing the staffing report, if you're doing the 2151s, any of that kind of stuff where you're actually working in a customer's file, I would appreciate you taking a look at when you're doing that. Is it step 2 for the ISTEP, or is that step 1? I can't remember for sure. But if you're doing that step where you're reviewing the ISTEP for the customers, if you could take a peek and see if they are either on track, off track, complete, or not required, that would be really nice for us. Then on the ISTEP dashboard, as we're looking at that, we have some new items that are showing up on the actual drop-down. Sorry, folks, it's taken a moment here for it to fill. Come on, baby, I know you can do it. Let's see if I can get the live one to show up a little bit faster. All right, make this a little bit bigger. On the ISTEP dashboard, we have the items listed here. So we've got not required. Oh, thank you. Some of you have already marked them as not required. Wonderful, wonderful. And we have the number here that it's no steps identified. If you're doing this the right way, your total of complete and or not required should equal the no steps identified at least. And then that way we know that if there's no steps identified but we've got that many people marked as not required, those things should match. Under the career planning and academic technical training, we have a section under the steps where we're actually going to be counting steps that have been added by a different type of listing here. They're based on the IWDS listing for all of those different steps. We're going to be adding an additional one that says other, because there's 4 different items that don't fall into one of these categories. So we're going to be adding an other at the bottom of this. So this will show you what those steps are counting as. And then on the worksheet, the initial customer intake worksheet that's down in the file pod, it has on there where those steps fall into this listing that you can see right here. Under the academic, we have remedial training, adult education and literacy, English language proficiency, work-based learning, and occupational classroom training. We have those items marked as well on the academic listing on the intake worksheet. So if you look between the 2 documents, you'll see all of these items listed out here. And again, we have not required on academic, on career planning, and also on the personal development. So those are the pieces for the ISTEP update. If you've got any questions about that, we're happy to answer those for you. One of the next things that we're doing is we're going to be doing follow-up on our TA visits that we did during the last quarter of the year. I got all of my letters off to Tammy, so you should, if you have not already gotten your letter, you should be getting that hopefully by the beginning of next week. And there will be a list of things that you probably have already gotten fixed, but are actually in official form from Tammy at that point. We'll be starting to do some of those follow-up visits where we're going to dive into some actual case files, make sure that everything is squared away, and that you have answered any of the concerns that we had during our TA visits, and if there's anything else that we need to help you digest or understand, we're going to be doing that. This will be a whole lot less formal than the last visits. It will probably be just me or just Olivia or just Tammy coming out and making those visits, and we'll be looking at some paper files as well as the EPIC online files. So it won't be anything stressful, hopefully. I hope our other visits weren't very stressful either, but we will be getting those scheduled. I'm trying to get in touch with a couple of agencies right now to get those initial ones scheduled, and then I'll be working on the rest of them during the end of January and February. Nancy's asking, do the ISTEP instructions define what the steps in the dashboard relate to? Do you mean the IWDS status or the 2151A? Both, okay. On here, the instructions don't delineate that, although we could make that change to the instructions. But the worksheet lists whether a step is diagnostic testing, career planning, paid work experience, self-directed job search, or follow-up services. And then for the academic steps, it lists whether they're one of these items. If it doesn't have a listing next to it, it doesn't really count for anything. So does that answer your question, Nancy? Oh, she was already typing. Great. All right. You know how to get me. I know you do. All righty. Okay. Tammy, do you want to talk about the modifications and the, hang on. Kelsey's asking, is IWDS and WorkNet actually linked? Olivia, I know IWDS is managed by WorkNet.
Yeah. We do sync with IWDS and a few occasions on some other projects, but for EPIC, IWDS and WorkNet are not linked.
All right. We'll get back to your next question there, Kelsey. So, Tammy, do you want to talk about modifications and grants?
I sure do. First of the year, and all of our grants are going to be expiring at the end of this month. So we have to do the modifications literally starting next week. There's a couple of things I would have liked to have done in this modification, but we're still waiting on some approval from FNS. Part of that deals with changing the line item budgets for the CBOs. But some of the things that we're going to be changing is the term of the date, and we're going to be negotiating this with each of our providers, determining if you guys want to extend the term of the grant, and then also if you're in a position to do it. So if we have some providers that are in a position where maybe their performance is considerably less than their expenditure rate, we need to take a look at those types of items. But the things that we're going to be doing is we're going to be extending the grant term. I anticipate to the end of our grant term, which is December of 2018. We're going to be adding an assessment area for the performance measures, so that's going to help everybody out because that'll take into consideration all of the people that have been referred to you that you've done assessments with, but may never end up in a training program. So that's going to be beneficial for all of our grantees. We're going to add an option that if you want to add an additional training program, we can do that. So it'll be, adding other training programs with the approval of the department without having to do a modification. So that allows some more flexibility with your grants. If there's somebody that comes in and for some reason you want to provide a different services, that's not in your scope of work at this time. So all of those things are going to be moving. Starting next week, I'm going to be sending out a report that shows your performance based upon adding the new assessment measure. I'm going to send you a report that also shows your expenditure rate from our GRS. Now, I know that some of you guys have more expenditures than what's reported in the GRS because you've capped out on some of your line items. So in that report, I'm going to want you to identify what that additional expenditures are so we know what those are. And then we can also take a look at increasing grants in specific areas also where there's a need for that, or maybe moving money within specific areas where there's a need for that. And then one of the other things, we are in this re-engagement process. I'm hoping you guys are getting customers coming back to you through that re-engagement process. I think it's been kind of a slow trickle. I don't think we've had a huge volume of people at this point that are coming back in. So we're just trying to manage that and try and figure out what that is. With that said, there is quite a bit of money that is still left in the EPIC program, and so there is conversation on potentially another opportunity of adding a cohort. That's not finalized. It's just strictly in conversation, but it's something that's going to have to be fast-tracked if we're going to do that. So I just wanted to give you guys a heads up that there may be an opportunity that you would be receiving some additional people that will be outside of the random assignment, outside of the treatment group and control group, and it'd be a different group. It's, like I said, once again, this is conversation that's, and it's initiation, and DHS has to get that approved through FNS. So that's basically where we're at. It's going to be a crazy month this month, working with all of you guys and, getting the grants modified and things moving. The things that you guys really need to look at is, your caseloads and where they're at in their training and their placement. Placement and employment is really critical, and honestly, our numbers should be higher on the employment side, especially since we're at the end of this grant term. So you need to take a look and make sure you're documenting everything in the system correctly, that you're documenting employment correctly, and that you're putting the steps in that need to be put in. We will definitely, it's part of what we're going to be doing on this second phase is data validation and making sure that all of our data in the system's clean, because that's what's going to be looked at and evaluated. So that's basically, I think, what I've got. Let me see if we've got questions.
Kelsey's wanting to know about if there's a way to document employment that DHS has verified, but that the CBOs are unable to verify.
And that's still a very tricky question. And one of the things that I've been wishing for and trying to push is to be able to have wage data for EPIC that we can get from IDES, and that deals with some level of data sharing agreements and some other things that we need to work with. But that's something that it's been a concern, yes, that we've heard of, and there's a possibility that we can potentially get that information internally too. But that's what we're trying to work on. I guess each of them will depend upon the circumstances. If they completed your training program, or if they completed job readiness with you, and then you were able to get them to certain points, and they got unemployed. Did they just drop off, or where were they at in your cycle? So if they came in and they did an assessment, but then they disappeared and they didn't receive any services, then you wouldn't be able to count them as employed. But if they walked through, your training processes with you, and then they were employed, and then they dropped off, and they're not getting back with you, that's a different circumstance as far as counting these particular customers. Okay, and other questions. Actually uses Career Connect, which auto-dumps daily into IWDS from WIOA. Okay. Yeah, the Career Connect, that's a totally different. That's dealing with the WIOA program. We do not do anything with Career Connect or IWDS for EPIC.
If we have the initial enrollment, we should be able to count them as working anyway. Oh, okay. So Kelsey put in there a little bit, it got mixed up into a couple of other things, that sometimes people move from one agency to another, and we need to make sure that those numbers get moved with the agency, so that
Correct.
if Kelsey does the assessment, but then now all of a sudden they're at North Lawndale, then we need to make sure that that's all counted appropriately.
And we are catching that in the system. The big thing is you guys have to make sure you keep those ISTEPs up to date. I know on some of the TA visits, we talked to some people who are updating them bi-monthly or once the customer is completed, but you really need to make sure you're updating those ISTEPs with the customer so we can have real-time access to that information. And then also, like you said, Kelsey, you know, once a customer moves to a new CBO, you no longer have access to that information. But we keep all of everything you've ever done with them and put into their account. We keep that all in the system. The new CBO does not have access to edit it or do anything to change it. So it's all there, and we're counting it for their original CBO and their new CBO. We're separating that out.
So you will get the count for your services based upon the information that's documented in the ISTEP and what you've accomplished with that customer at specific times.
I think when we have our next conversation with DHS, I think we'll bring up the point of having them provide any employment information verification that they have with us. I think that would be a nice piece on their part to provide that to us.
And something that's not on the agenda, but something I wanted to let you guys know too, in the download pod, there's several documents, and there's a couple of them that I want you guys to download and take a look at. One of them is an IDHS SPCQ version 3.5, and then the security and privacy. On our webinar on the 31st, DHS is going to be presenting that. And what they want to do is they want to open up their IES system for you guys to be able to have access so that you can actually do verification of eligibility live. And then that may be a conversation that we can have with them too at that point is if there's any access that you guys can get with the wage data that they're securing too. But you know, this is huge. If we can get you guys access to their IES system like the current providers are doing, it'll be a huge benefit for you guys, and it'll be you know, really good for you guys to help manage your customers also. So on the 31st, make sure that you're participating in the webinar that we're having here on that, and then I want you to download those documents and start looking at them and kind of pre-fill them out. There's going to be instructions on the 31st on that also, but I would like for you guys to have at least taken a look at these, and if you have questions on these documents, that we can address those on the webinar on the 31st.
That's big.
Yeah, that's going to be huge.
Yeah, because if they've got wage verification in ISTEP, that would be, this will also allow, if this works the way it's supposed to, this will also allow you guys to see when redeterminations are due and when notifications are due so that you can help your customers meet their DHS requirements. I know we've had a couple of people that have gotten sanctioned or canceled because they didn't do a redetermination, but they were actively participating in their training program. So that will be a great piece to help them with that. Are any of you on the call that are regular SNAP ENT providers as well as EPIC ENT providers, and if you are, do you already have access to IES? Okay, we got a bunch of people typing. And Mary Beth is saying, just a note, our ISTEP dashboard is pulling in numbers for those that never started and don't have a plan option. We've emailed the help desk, and Natasha is looking at it. Eric Grebner from Homework Hangout is saying the same thing. Phalanx is not able to determine eligibility for IES or for customers. Is this, okay. Okay. Eric is asking a question. Since I haven't heard anything official, is Macon County mandatory now, or are we still voluntary? Tammy, have you heard anything about that? I have not.
Yes. Every county is voluntary still, with the exception of, and I'm hoping I'm getting this one right, I want to say it's DeKalb. Don't quote me on that, though. But there is only one county that was not approved in the waiver, and I can let you know. It's a county that's not in any of our EPIC service areas, so it doesn't affect any of you guys. But we still have the same status because the waiver was approved for all of the other counties.
Oh, Cheryl's saying DuPage.
DuPage, thank you.
DuPage and DeKalb sound a lot alike sometimes. Plus,
Yeah.
they're on either
kind of close
side
to
of
each other.
Kane County.
There we go. They're kind of close.
I
didn't pay much
attention. On either side of Kane County where I live, so it's really confusing for me sometimes.
And I didn't pay much attention because I knew it didn't affect the EPIC program. So.
Yeah. So some of you can get in, some of you can't. Some of you can see part of the system, some of you can't. So that means that if you've already filled out the paperwork and it's taking them a while to get you into the system, if you do want access to IES, I would make sure that you fill that paperwork out. And is there an email on it, Tammy, that you remember that they need to submit?
Not that I recall. But you can send them to me direct if you'd like, and then we can make sure that we get those to him also.
Okay. All right. Anything else for us to answer for you? All right. We'll get these. We'll get this recording up and posted as soon as we can. Oh, here. Autumn just said, I just did electronic staffing with DHS, and old 2151As were added, and the dates changed really strange. Does not show until I upload it. That glitch happened before. So, Olivia, can you make a note of that? In fact, Autumn, can you call Olivia when we're done here?
Dee, I just sent you an email. I have to call somebody right after this, but then I was going to call Autumn unless you could get to her before I could.
I'll call. Autumn, call me. I'm going to put my phone number in here. Call me, and we'll talk and figure out what's going on. Okay, and then I can talk to Cody, too. Okay. All right. Anything else? Hey, look, we're done in under 30 minutes.
Yay! Everybody
be
expecting conversations with me next week related to the grant processing, because we're going to be moving that quickly.
All right, and I'm going to start scheduling the second round of